Man, again, I talk about agenda a lot on this channel. Yikes. So here we go. Some of the biggest names in the women's basketball are in the triangle this weekend, but unless you have an invite from USA Basketball, you won't be catching a glimpse. USA women's national team is holding a closed camp at Duke University December 12th through the 14th.
Following an extended break from competitive play, Caitlin Clark will step back onto the hardwood on December 12th as USA Basketball conducts training sessions in Durham, North Carolina. Clark has received an invitation to join the U.S. women's squad, though these participants haven't yet been confirmed as official roster members. Selection decisions remain pending. Sue Bird now holds the position of managing director, which raises questions about potential favoritism and predetermined outcomes. Several prominent figures in women's hoops are gathering in the Triangle region this weekend. Though access remains restricted to invited athletes only, the women's national squad is conducting a private training session at Duke University from December 12th through the 14th, bringing together 17 elite competitors as the organization prepares for the 2026 FIBA Women's World Cup scheduled for Berlin.
14th, bringing 17 of the sport's biggest stars to Durham as preparations ramp up for the 2026 FIBA Women's World Cup in Berlin. This is the first national camp overseen by Carol Lawson, Duke's own women's basketball coach, who was appointed to lead the Team USA through 2028. It's also the first camp for managing director Sue Bird, the four-time Olympic gold medalist.
This marks the initial training session under Carol Lawson's leadership, Duke's own women's coach who received the appointment to guide Team USA through 2028. This also represents Sue Bird's debut camp as managing director, with the four-time Olympic gold winner now tasked with building the upcoming World Cup and Olympic squads. Concerns exist about how this selection process will unfold. The roster of athletes working out on Duke's grounds includes proven Olympic medalists, emerging Wnba talents, and highly discussed young competitors in the game. Kelsey Plum, Chelsea Gray, Jackie Young, Aja Wilson, and Brianna Stewart represent the established veterans taking part. Diana Taurasi, Diarika Hamby, and Betnija Laney fill out additional spots.
Gold medalists now responsible for assembling the next World Cup and Olympic rosters. Oh boy, we're going to see how that's going to go. I don't know. A mix of players training on Duke's campus include established Olympic champions, rising WNBA stars, and some of the most talked about young players in the sport: Kaylee Copper, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Brittany Griner.
Among the younger generation, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Buchers, and Cameron Brink headlined the invitees. Aaliyah Boston and Satu Sabeli also received invitations. This training period signals the start of a transition phase for USA Basketball, with Bird and Lawson steering the program forward. Decisions made over the coming 2 years will determine the roster composition for 2026's World Cup and subsequent Olympic competitions. If Clark somehow fails to secure a position on these teams, significant backlash would certainly follow. Sue Bird addressed the situation in statements to reporters.
Sport: Kaylee Copper, Chelsea Gray, Kelsey Plum, Jackie Young, Brittany Griner. Major veterans participating: Diarika Hamby, Brianna Jones, that's 3x3. And then, of course, Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, Cameron Brent, and it goes on and on from there. By the way, Aaliyah Boston, Sonia Centron are part of that. This camp marks the beginning of a generational handoff for USA Basketball. Sue Bird and Lawson leading the program the next 2 years will shape how the team looks.
She acknowledged experiencing moments of adjustment, realizing her playing days have ended and everything feels different now, including having to wear all the team-issued gear. Overall, the transition has gone smoothly, with USA Basketball staff providing excellent support. For the moment, Bird plans to observe quietly and watch the young talent pool assembled in Durham. Juju Watkins does not appear to be actively participating in drills. Bird described this as an excellent chance for players to gain initial exposure and experience. She cautioned against interpreting the absence of major stars like Aja Wilson, Nafisa Collier, and Brianna Stewart as meaningful.
The next 2 years will shape how the team looks for 2026's World Cup and the Olympics. Man, I got to tell you, if somehow, some way, Caitlin Clark ends up not on these squads, oh my God, the world's going to freaking explode. So, Sue Bird made some comments about this entire situation. Quote, I've definitely had some moments where it's like, oh, I'm not a player anymore. This is totally different.
With considerable time remaining before the next tournament, USA Basketball issued numerous invitations while recognizing some athletes might have conflicting commitments during this basketball season. Bird explained that women's basketball faces constant evolution, with off-season chances continuously shifting. No player's absence carries deeper significance than simple scheduling conflicts. However, this raises obvious questions. If athletes received invitations, shouldn't everyone seriously considered for team selection attend? Bird essentially indicated those 3 absent players don't need to participate, yet they'll likely earn roster spots anyway.
Quote, I've definitely had some moments where it's like, oh, I'm not a player anymore. This is totally different. Like, oh, I have to wear all my team-issued stuff now. Bird told the media Thursday afternoon. But for the most part, it's been great. Everybody with USA Basketball has been super helpful. For now, Bird is content to be, quote, a fly on the wall and observe the young player pool on hand in Durham. Juju Watkins to my knowledge, is not actively practicing. Quote, it's a great opportunity to get their first feel.
Multiple training sessions throughout the year serve important purposes, allowing everyone to gain familiarity and build continuity. By World Cup time, participants will have accumulated some involvement and understanding of the system. Regarding veteran contributions, Bird emphasized their critical role during these camps. Experienced players truly shine in these settings, helping establish the proper atmosphere and culture. Beyond coaching staff, these veterans bring invaluable perspective. They've experienced this environment previously and understand the expectations.
Their first feel to get their first taste. Bird said not to read into the absence of marquee stars like Asia Wilson, Nephisia Collier, and Breonna Stewart. With months to go before the next competition, USA Basketball cast a wide net of invitations, knowing some players may have other obligations at the time of the basketball season. Quote, in the landscape of women's basketball, which is ever-changing off-season opportunities are ever-changing, I don't think any player that you might think would have.
Through their actions and communication, they educate younger teammates. However, an important consideration remains. The previous selection committee chose Diana Taurasi over Caitlin Clark, including an aging veteran instead. While veteran leadership holds value, sacrificing actual roster positions for players who ultimately receive DNP designations, which happened with Taurasi, seems questionable. Anyone with legitimate chances of making this squad should probably attend these sessions. Sue Bird's involvement generates some unease.
Are ever-changing. I don't think any player that you might think would have been here, not been here, has a larger meaning. Why wouldn't we think that? I mean, if you invited a player, I mean, shouldn't everybody that even has a sniff of being on this team be there? So she just basically said those 3 players, they don't have to be here, but, there's a good chance they're going to be on the team. Okay. I mean, if you say so.
Gino Auriemma has already publicly suggested that Paige Buchers, a UConn graduate and one of his former players like Bird herself, could become the next iteration of Sue Bird on future Olympic rosters. Does any situation involving WNBA athletes or women's basketball occur without suspicious backroom arrangements? Many circumstances appear predetermined. While rigged might sound harsh, patterns emerge, suggesting that meeting certain criteria, maintaining particular relationships, and checking specific boxes influences selection decisions and priorities. Women's basketball desperately needs to eliminate these dynamics.
There will probably be, I would guess, an expansion draft for the Toronto Tempo and the Portland Fire, I would guess within 2 or 3 days of whenever that CBA gets done. The deadline is now less than a month, January 9th, to try to get the freaking CBA talks done. But it does not look like Sophie Cunningham may be on the protected list by the Indiana Fever.
For league growth and sport development, the WNBA and women's basketball overall must abandon such practices. Removing agenda-driven decisions from women's basketball remains absolutely essential. On December 12th, Caitlin Clark will return to basketball activities, practicing alongside actual competitors and attempting shots from beyond the arc. Whether any video documentation emerges from these closed sessions remains uncertain, though footage would certainly attract significant attention if released. Guju Watkins apparently won't be participating in full practice activities based on available information.
Sophie Cunningham may be on the protected list by the Indiana Fever. I'm not thrilled by this. I still believe this plays in part, plays into my theory about agenda being part of what this team cares about. Unfortunately, I think it's part of what leadership cares about all over the league. And Sophie Cunningham does not fit into their agenda. If the Indiana Fever were smart, based on marketing alone, I would keep Sophie Cunningham.
The situation surrounding Sophie Cunningham and the Indiana Fever has become increasingly concerning for supporters of the talented wing player. Her time with the franchise appears to be in jeopardy, along with several other popular roster members, as the league prepares for significant changes ahead. The WNBA is currently working to finalize a new collective bargaining agreement, with negotiations underway and a deadline approaching on January 9th. Once this agreement is reached, an expansion draft for the Toronto Tempo and Portland Fire is expected to follow quickly, potentially within just a few days. This draft represents a critical moment that could reshape multiple team rosters across the league.
Marketing alone, I would keep Sophie Cunningham on this team. You just found out she was the most Googled athlete for women in the entire United States for 2025. Sophie Cunningham, the Indiana Fever's popular wing player, is heading towards free agency. There's one way that journey could be interrupted, though, and that's because of the WNBA expansion draft. Toronto and Portland will be partaking in the draft this offseason to build their rosters.
Reports suggest that Cunningham may not appear on Indiana's protected player list when the expansion draft occurs. This development is particularly surprising given her marketing value and widespread popularity. Recent data revealed that Cunningham was the most searched female athlete in the United States for 2025, demonstrating her significant appeal to fans nationwide. The expansion draft process allows Toronto and Portland to select players from existing teams, with each franchise able to shield a limited number of athletes from selection. Current estimates from ESPN indicate that teams will protect approximately 5 players each, though discussions suggest this number might increase to 6 depending on the final CBA terms.
Build their rosters as league's new teams. Each existing team can protect players from being picked, which ESPN estimates will be 5 players protected per team. I have heard that there's a chance that 6 players might emerge as part of the CBA, but I don't know. ESPN's Kevin Pelton notes that an expansion team could see Cunningham as, quote, a core.
According to ESPN analyst Kevin Pelton, an expansion team could view Cunningham as a core candidate for their roster. This designation would enable Toronto or Portland to select her during the draft and present her with a substantial 1-year contract offer. While Cunningham doesn't necessarily fit the traditional profile for this category, her popularity surged dramatically in 2025 following her arrival in Indiana and partnership with Caitlin Clark. The Fever organization has previously struggled with expansion draft decisions. The team's choice to leave Temi Fagbenle unprotected proved costly, as she became one of the Golden State Valkyries' most impactful contributors.
Cam is, quote, a core candidate, no doubt about it, that essentially would allow them to take Cunningham in the expansion draft and offer her a huge 1-year contract. Does she fit the mold of that type of player? Not necessarily. Although Cunningham's general popularity went through the roof in 2025 after joining up with Indiana and teaming up with Caitlin Clark. Now, by the way, the Indiana Fever have a history of failing.
Her defensive length and overall contributions were noticeably absent from Indiana's lineup throughout the season. Cunningham's on-court production supports her value beyond marketing appeal. During a significant stretch of approximately 20 games last season, she excelled in three-point shooting, outperforming teammates in that category. Despite this performance, she was overlooked for the three-point contest in favor of Lexi Hull, though Hull remains a valuable player in her own right. The uncertainty extends beyond Cunningham to other fan-favorite players on the roster.
Now, by the way, the Indiana Fever have a history of failing protecting players in the expansion draft. We all found out very quickly that losing Timmy Fabinley was a massive, massive strike on the front office of the Indiana Fever. No doubt they chose poorly. And Timmy had a really nice season for the Golden State Valkyries. One of their most valuable players. We missed her length very quickly.
Chloe Peterson, Damiris Dantos, and Erica Wheeler all face uncertain futures. Additionally, younger talents like Celeste Taylor, who many considered a logical backup option for Clark given her youth and athleticism, may not receive protection. Veteran players Temi Fagbenle and Nalissa Smith also find themselves in vulnerable positions. Last season demonstrated that Indiana thrived when employing an up-tempo playing style, utilizing speed to overwhelm opponents. The fast-paced approach proved highly effective when executed properly.
One of their most valuable players. We missed her length very quickly. Cunningham, by the way, we looked at her stats before. 3-point shots. She destroyed 3-point shots for about a 20-game stretch last year. When they were talking about putting Lexi Hull in the three-point contest, I said, if anybody hasn't noticed, Sophie's the one shooting the three better right now and has been for the last 20 games. They took Lexi. Nothing against.
However, head coach Stephanie White appears to prefer a different tactical approach, which may influence roster decisions moving forward. The broader implications are substantial for a franchise positioned to become the league's premier destination. With Clark as the centerpiece, Indiana has the potential to achieve a status comparable to iconic sports franchises. The organization possesses a unique opportunity that few teams ever receive. A core group centered around Clark, Cunningham, and Hull represents a foundation with significant growth potential.
They took Lexi. Nothing against Lexi, but I just was pointing that out at the time. Yeah, this sucks. And it's not the only players. Right here, Chloe Bibby, another fan favorite. Right? Sydney Colson. Ari McDonald. All right? Somebody that I would guess you would have thought might have been some kind of a priority.
Kelsey Mitchell fits naturally into this group as well, and some would include Aaliyah Boston in this nucleus. Together, these players form a combination capable of sustaining success over multiple seasons. However, the WNBA has a documented history spanning 27 years of missed opportunities and questionable decision-making. These missteps occur both at the league office level and within individual franchise operations. Indiana now faces a critical juncture where similar mistakes could undermine their advantageous position.